Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where healing and mamahood intersect. I'm Emily, your host. Join us as we discover practical strategies to nurture ourselves with kindness and understanding. Stay tuned for insights and inspiration to support you on your path of healing and growth. Let's dive in together. This is Mamahood After Trauma. Hello, mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. This is another very special episode of the podcast. Over the last several episodes, we have been listening to the amazing speakers from the Mamahood After Trauma symposium that happened in August of 2024. In this episode, we are hearing the amazing and uplifting story of Jacquie Norton. Jacquie is the founder of the Mama Jac, a podcast of her own, and she is sharing about embracing shadows and illuminating light. Without further ado, here is Jacquie. Hey, mamas. Are you ready to dive deeper into your healing journey? Become a VIP subscriber to the Mamahood After Trauma podcast email list. Get exclusive updates about the podcast, sneak peeks at new offers, behind the scenes content, exclusive email only content, and early access to our Mended Mama Academy programs. Stay connected, stay inspired, and let's heal together. Sign up today. Your breakthrough is just a click away. Head to the link in the show notes to subscribe.
Starting with a journal entry from me. After having a child, I seriously felt like my soul was sucked out of my old body, stored in a new body, and it's hidden behind a pit of new obstacles that I have to overcome at least once a week. Whether it be physical or mental, I am different, and no one prepares you for how much you will change. People that don't know will never understand the struggle of having to be a human again after having a child and becoming a mother. Do not expect me to ever be the same. Do not expect me to put up with any bullshit because I have enough of that going on that I can't control. Do not expect me to show up if you are not showing up or have let me down repeatedly in the past. I am still healing a fucking year later. Who the hell am I? Where is all the support I thought I'd have? Why is this the hardest yet most beautiful thing I've ever done in my entire life? Why does my body have to be tortured to feel the most exquisite love I've ever felt in my life? We are about to enter a journey of me hitting my rock bottom, going through my healing process, and what it's done for me since. Hi, everybody. My name is Jacquie Norton. I created the Mama Jac almost 2 years ago after I went through the darkest days I've ever lived. I hit my rock bottom. I had one foot in the grave. It took my world completely going black before I realized things needed to change. My journey of healing began with a flip of a card. I felt so alone at the bottom. It was like being in a world with billions of people, but walking it as a ghost. During my rock bottom, I didn't really notice I was going through a rock bottom, right? As we all do. I would have a bad day, bad day, bad day, good day, bad moment, bad moment, bad moment, good moment. And I would hold on to those good moments. I had tools to help me. I had meditation. I knew about journaling. I had mindfulness practice. None of these things were working. I remember one day before I went through my mental breakdown, my husband was at work. I was so overwhelmed. My kids were crying for whatever reason kids cry for, right? They cry all the time. And my son was in the bathroom taking a bath. My daughter, I had already given her a bath and she was in her little walker, and I collapsed. I collapsed. I couldn't take it anymore. I called my husband. I was lashing out on him. I felt empty inside. I felt like, why is this happening to me? I've been trying everything in my power to get a hold of myself, and I cannot get a hold of myself, Jacquie. Why? Jacquie, just get a hold of yourself. And it wasn't happening. I went through self-harm. There was a reason I got curtain bangs at one time. We'll just say that. If you've been through any of this, you understand. I'm not afraid to share my journey and how personal and deep it got. There were days when I would wake up and I would cry because I had to face another day. There were moments where I would plan in my head and convince myself that if I were no longer here, my husband would find a beautiful woman because he is an amazing father, and she could treat my children better than I could ever treat them. And what was this? This was postpartum depression. This was postpartum anxiety. This was PMDD. This was trauma. This was PTSD. I started to work through it with a therapist, little by little. I started to learn that the self-harm was coming from my PTSD and lack of control. So when my kids, I couldn't control my kids. Of course you can't control kids, they're kids, right? But I couldn't control my kids. So immediately, it was like without a thought, boom, I would go into self-harm. And unfortunately, they did see this a couple times. And it breaks my heart that they saw this a couple times. The phone call I mentioned earlier broke me. That broke me. The next day, I wasn't able to speak. I wasn't able to be around my children. There was a physical change in me. They would come close to me and I would jump. Hearing their voices would make me just dead inside. And I had love for my children. I did. I had all the love I could give. I tried to never show them those dark parts of myself, those parts of myself that just ate at me every day. So many women go through this. I bet you most of the women listening to this, if you're a mom, you've had a moment or two like this. And I fought my postpartum depression for 3 years. 3 years. And it took me becoming numb to the whole world to finally realize I needed to do something about it. It just so happens that I had a retreat scheduled. I was on the phone with my psychologist and my psychiatrist, and I was like, what do? I have this retreat scheduled. It was a mother's retreat. I had booked it 6 months prior. Okay, 6 months prior, talking about divine timing, 6 months prior. And it just so happened that my huge mental breakdown where I was unable to even speak, unable to be around my children, I laid in bed and just sat there like an empty shell. It was almost like no thoughts could even come up. It wasn't even depression anymore. It wasn't anxiety anymore. I was just done. So they said, Jacquie, this isn't your safe place anymore being at home. Go to the retreat. I talked about a flip of a card. That retreat was eye-opening to me. It was healing to me. It was a mom's retreat in Virginia Beach, put on by Nicole Hennessy, and I will forever owe her. I feel like I'm indebted forever to her because this retreat helped me so much. I got out of my space. I was able to be around women that were supportive. I had been around women that were supportive, but I couldn't be supported in any way in the time of my despair because my mind couldn't get there. It couldn't be clear. So finally, before I go on this retreat, my therapist sat me down and she said, Jacquie, we have no other choice. You need to get a psychiatrist. I was breastfeeding for my children while pumping and for my daughter at the time. And I did not want to give that up, but she had just turned a year old. And I was like, you know what, Jac? We can't do this to ourselves anymore. It's either we're gone or we're here and we're going to fight. And after I was put on that medication, of course, you go through a time, but I traveled to Virginia Beach and I went to this retreat and magical things happened. I had been part of a group that I had started on an app called Peanut. It's a mothering app. And I started a group called Good Morning Mamas. Now, we went in there, we shared what was happening with our parenting experiences, what was happening in our lives, and we would help each other. Everybody in this place used to be like, you should have a podcast. And I'd be like, but what would I talk about? What would I talk about? You know, I never had the drive in me to get it done. I barely had the drive to wake up in the morning and do my minimal things that I would have to get done throughout the day. So I go to the retreat and we do a lot of self-healing. There was a childhood meditation that helped me so much. There were circles that we would go in, and I remember this one particular circle. And we were asked the question, what would you like to change in yourself? What is that thing in the pit of your stomach that sits there that you feel is a quality that you would like to get rid of? What is digging inside of you? And it seems to keep coming up. Mine was depression and anxiety and my whole mental breakdown. My life had fallen apart before my eyes. Luckily, I had people there that could support me. But a lot of women go through this and they don't have the people there to support them. I had no answer to this question. I had no answer. And Nicole looked around the room and she's like, does anybody need help? And I said, me? I said, what do I do with this? I'm feeling my worst. I can't get out of this. I've tried everything. I've tried all the tools that I know, and I can't pull myself out of this. Even on this medication, I'm still feeling these things. So I was a little spiritual at the time. I wasn't against it, but what was I to lose, right? She's like, pull an oracle card. See if that helps. So I said, what the hell? Let's do it. Pulled an oracle card, and I'll never forget this in my life. I pulled a card. It was the Priestess. And on the card, it said, share your journeys with others to help. And in my head, I was like, there it is. There's the Mama Jac podcast. I've gone through this evil, dark thing. I'm starting to get a breath of fresh air at this point. I'm starting to get a breath of fresh air. I come back from the retreat. I'm on the phone with my psychologist, and she and my psychiatrist were getting together to compare notes to make sure my diagnosis was correct and I was on the correct medication for what I needed to be on. So I go through. In the childhood meditation I did at the retreat, 7-year-old me popped up. And I was shocked at this because why would 7-year-old me pop up? But I remember my school picture completely. I had a pink polka dotted dress on and a matching hairband, hello 90s, and she was there and she needed hugged. And during these childhood meditations, you learn how to mother yourself. So fast forward to me talking to my psychologist. When do you remember trauma happening? What is the first thing that you remember in your brain? I remember my mother's mental breakdown when I was 7 years old. I didn't realize this until that moment when those words came out of my mouth, that is the reason why this little girl came to me. When I had my mental breakdown, my son had been sick with the stomach flu. I had handled it before and been fine. For some reason, this time, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now we're putting pieces together. When I was 7 years old, my mother went through this mental breakdown. I couldn't handle her being hurt. I wanted to be there with her every second of the day. I would try to make myself throw up, or actually make myself throw up, to go home from school so I could be with her. Connection. We started working through this trauma. I went on to tell her more. That's for another day. But we started working through this trauma, right? How do I get through this trauma? Now, after this retreat, I was sparked with this feeling inside of me that I had never felt before. It was inspiration. It was hope. It was hope. For the first time in years, I felt hope. And I got to business. The Mama Jac, my podcast. How will it start? My story. My story. I was in the depths of hell, and I'm pulling myself out piece by piece by piece. This does not happen overnight, but I can assure you, when you start the healing process, a little bit gets lifted, a little bit gets lifted, a little bit gets lifted, and then you're looking back and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm a different person. If you would have met me 3 years ago, you wouldn't recognize who I was. There's no way you would recognize who I was. I hid it from a lot of people. I was masking in front of a lot of people. But through my healing journey, I learned I don't need to mask anymore. I need to get this word out so that the other women going through this could have somebody that they're like, I feel that. So women can understand this is not as rare as you think it is. So people could resonate with the stories that me and my guests were telling on my podcast. I had so much feedback from people. Thank you so much. I've been here before. I feel your story in my soul. And that was not only great for me, being like, oh my goodness, people aren't feeling alone. I felt so alone. I felt so lost every day. No one could help me. I couldn't even help me. I've learned through meditation, through journaling, through shadow work, which I will get into, and through childhood work, mothering yourself. That's what that means, mothering yourself through situations. When triggers come up, why is this trigger coming up? Why am I so angered right now? There's a root to that problem. And when you get to that root, you learn to understand and you can be there for yourself. You having your own support is the best thing for you. It is you. When you get to that point, you don't need anybody else's approval because you know where you're at and you know that you're going to be okay. Shadow work. We've probably been hearing this term being passed around. Shadow work is getting to the root of those issues, getting to the root. Maybe you feel like you've had an absolutely perfect life growing up, right? What I had nothing to worry about. I was in a great middle-class family. Mom and dad were there. They're still married. Maybe my mom was sick my whole life. Okay, so that's where my trauma comes from. My mom was sick my whole life. And I've been working through that, right? Even still, healing is an ongoing process. We might initially feel this high when we hit an aha moment, but just know it's going to pop up and that's okay. Because through your healing, through your meditation, through your writing, through your journaling, through your shadow work, this seems like a lot, but I promise you it gets easier and easier as it goes. It doesn't have to be hours out of the day. It can be thinking a thought and being like, this doesn't serve me. Why am I thinking this way? Okay, Jackie, you are safe in this moment though. This isn't what's happening. Bring yourself back to the now. It helps you free yourself. It helps you free your mind. I got it through spirituality. I started praying to my higher power and getting messages from my higher power, getting strength from my higher power when I couldn't be there for myself. I felt comfort in that. And it's been beautiful ever since. It's been beautiful ever since. My whole podcast is about normalizing things that happen as parents because it happens to a lot of us. Depression, trauma, loss, disease, parenting ourselves again, birth trauma. It's all stuff we need to talk about. This is so much deeper than just saying the words, the stories, the things that you feel ignited within yourself. If you take anything away from this speech today, I want you to know that you have it all inside of you. You have it all inside of you. There will be helpers along the way, but it's you that is the most important. It is you that is the most important. It is you that is the most important. Today, I have my podcast. The name has changed now. It's not the Mama Jac. It's Rise and Shine with the Mama Jac. It is Rise because we rise from our trauma. We rise from our triggers. We learn and we rise through that. It is Shine because we are shining afterwards. Even a smile when you're feeling better on a good day is shining. Sharing your story is shining. It might feel painful at the time, but you are helping others talk openly about these things. From my podcast, I have started women's support groups. I have started writing a book about it. I have started public speaking, and I'm in the works to starting a nonprofit for mental health, for maternal mental health, and postpartum mental health, not only for the mothers, but for the partners as well. I want to end with a current quote from myself. I want you to think back from the beginning and what you heard. Now, this quote sounds like it's from a totally different person, and it is. You're walking in your divine experience. It doesn't matter which road you take. It will always be divine. You will always be on your right path. Trust and love. Love is the key to all existence. Loving each other is the most important thing we can do for the collective. Spread your love and you will receive it back beyond measure. Spread your abundance and you will receive it back beyond measure. Trust in you. Truly be on your own team and everything else will fall into place in perfect order the way it is meant to happen. We are all one, so be on your own side. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. If you would like more of the Mamahood After Trauma community, make sure to look in the description of this episode for the link to become a Mamahood After Trauma Inner Circle member. Until next time, Mama, keep